Hello students, welcome back to this session of Master Mains PYQ. So today we will start from where we left yesterday, and we were discussing polity. So we will first complete all the questions of polity that came in GS paper 2 in this year's mains, right? So the question that was given to you guys yesterday was account for the legal and political factors responsible for the reduced frequency of using Article 356 by Union government since mid 1990s, right? So again, 356 has been in news recently. So it has been applied in some of the states such as Uttarakhand, Arunachal, right? And basically, if you look at this question from the perspective of landmark judgments also, so this question has two components. It has this legal, right, and the political factors, right? So it is automatically, it comes under the role of judiciary and also the center state relations, right? So that would contribute to the political factors. And if you notice the SR Bomai judgment that happened somewhere in 1994, so it is about to complete 30 years. So that could also be one of the important reasons why UPSC has asked this particular question. However, it was asked as a 15 marker, and you have to write it in 250 words, right? So the demand of the question is very clear. The question is asking you to account for what legal and political factors that change that has basically reduced the frequency of the usage of 356, right? So you just need to highlight those factors, separating in under two headings. One is the legal, where role of judiciary needs to be highlighted, or any important steps taken by the center needs to be highlighted, and also the political factors, how the Indian polity, right, it has decentralized federalism, it has strengthened federalism, right? You have to highlight on that aspect and how that decentralization has impacted the reduced frequency of the usage of Article 356, right? So very simply, we'll jump on to the introduction. So as far as the introduction is concerned, you can draw from the context the discourse of the question itself. So if you look at our model of polity, so India has adopted a federal polity, right? So we adopted a federal polity because we wanted to efficiently govern the vast diverse country, right? So that was the reason. But our model of federation, it is not a classical federalism where center and states are at equal terms. India is said to be a quasi federal state, right? We have a quasi federal model of federalism existing as a relationship between center and state. So in a quasi federal setup, the center automatically is stronger, right? And under Article 356, the center has the power, right, for the imposition of president's rule at times when the constitutional position of the states cannot function as per the constitution. If such a situation arises, so the center can always use 356 to impose president rule in that state. Now, if you look at the historic data, you can also quote the historic data here from between, if you look at 1966 to 1977, it has been used the most, more than 107, more than 107 times in total. But a majority of that has been used in this phase. After the 1990s, it has not been used much, not more than 30-35 times, right? So you can quote the data in the introduction also. So that would be a good way to start your answer here. Now, moving on, how would you proceed to structure the body, right? So you can clearly see the question is asking you to account for the legal and political factors. It is not asking for much of analysis. So you have to highlight what legal factors and what political factors can you identify that has been responsible. So very simply, you have to create a heading: legal and political factors responsible in curbing misuse of Article 356. So you can create a heading, and within that heading you can have a subheading that is legal factors. So we can first discuss the legal factors. Now, if you look at the legal factors, the role of judiciary has been prominent here, right? Now, there has been a series of judgments from 1977 to 1994, culminating with the SR Bomai judgment. So, SR Bomai judgment perhaps is the most important judgment that you can highlight here in this particular answer. But before SR Bomai, there was important judgments such as State of Rajasthan versus Union of India. You just need to understand how the judgment has evolved. What was decided in SR Bomai was a big question that has been going on with the judiciary. So, in State of Rajasthan versus Union of India, the court conceded that Article 74(2) of the Constitution, which relates to the powers of the president, it basically forbids the courts from examining the advice of the council that has been tendered to the president. So they cannot look into the what advice has been tendered, right? They cannot call for that advice in the court of law, right? So that was there under 74 clause 2. But then something significant happened. The 44th Amendment Act. So the 44th Amendment Act, it amended clauses 4 and 5 of Article 356, right? And because of this, the judiciary's stance on what the center can do with the powers that is vested under 356 also changed. So there was a case, A.K. Roy versus Union of India, where the Supreme Court categorically stated that after the amendments from because of the 44th Amendment Act, the logic of State of Rajasthan versus Union of India no longer holds with respect to the advice that is tendered to the council by the council to the president. And finally, the most important judgment, that is the SR Bomai versus Union of India, happened, right? So we are going to discuss more about SR Bomai versus Union of India because that is the direct demand of your answer, right? So SR Bomai versus Union of India, 1994. It was a landmark judgment, and the very first thing that SR Bomai versus Union of India it highlighted that federalism is part of basic structure doctrine. So the SR Bomai judgment, it emphasized on the federalism which is basically till now was understood to be quasi-federal. So the SR Bomai judgment, it cemented the position of federalism under the Indian constitution to be part of basic structure. Therefore, it did impact a lot on the misuse of Article 356 now, because federalism is now a part of basic structure. Now, there were certain observations made by the court in SR Bomai versus Union of India. Some of them was 356 is to be used as last resort, right? So the SR Bomai judgment, it noted that Article 356 is extreme, right? It is an extreme power and it should be used as a last resort only in cases where there is a constitutional impasse or the constitutional machinery in the state has been broken down, right? So then only the center can use it. The judgment also noted that it is not an absolute power. The judgment also noted that the power of the president under 356, it is not an absolute power. Rather, it is a conditional power. right? So what is the meaning of this? So the president cannot impose president's rule on the whims and fancies of the council of ministers. So there needs to be existence of material evidence. There is a need to go through the material evidence which is in the form of the reports, right? The reports that are shared by respective governors, and only after examining the material evidence can the president take that call whether or not he should impose precedence rule under article 356, right? The next important observation that was made by court in this particular judgment was no automatic dissolution. No automatic dissolution, right? So the Supreme Court in this judgment, it also stated that the power conferred under 356, through which the president can dissolve the legislative assembly, he cannot do it immediately. So he can dissolve, he can keep the house suspended, he can keep the house suspended, but he cannot dissolve the legislative assembly immediately. So unless the proclamation is approved by both the houses, right, the president can merely keep the imposition, the assembly in suspension and not dissolve it, right? It also laid down various checks that any uh, estimate of whether the government is enjoying confidence on the floor of the house, that trust vote should happen on the floor of the house and not in any other mechanisms. So if the governor wants to check the confidence, the trust vote, so it can only happen on the floor of the house and not in his imagination, right? So that is something that was very important, right? So you can write about trust vote. The next important point that has been highlighted in the SR Bomai judgment was the power to reinstate, right? So the SR Bomai judgment, it also discussed the power to reinstate a dismissed government, state government, which where they find that there is some malified or bad intentions involved. So this was also highlighted in Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India. So Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India, 2006 Supreme Court judgment, it extended the reasoning of SR Bomai and ruled that if the state assemblies are unconstitutionally dissolved, or it has been found that the intention was malified, then the judiciary has the power to reinstate the government. And this has been done in the past. In 2016, the Uttarakhand state government issued the application of 356 was revoked, the government was reinstated. It happened in Arunachal, right? So these are some of the important legal developments. And some other legal developments that happened during this time was the interstate council was constituted. So in 1990s, interstate council was constituted under article 263 of the constitution. So interstate council, what it did, it immediately formed the Sarkaria Commission, right? Sarkaria Commission to understand the issues in the center-state relations. And one of the recommendations of the Sarkaria Commission was to recommend the observations of the second ARC with respect to the misuse of Article 356, right? So because of all these factors, Article 356, legal factors, we are talking about legal factors here, Article 356 has been very sparingly used in recent times. So next we will create another heading, that is political factors. Right. So if you look at the political factors, the dynamics of Indian polity has changed after the 1990s. So the most important factor that you should identify and list down should be in priority, that what are the most important factors. So the first important factor here was coalition government, right? So unlike 1975, the era of 1975 to 1980, the governments now was more coalition. The existence and dominance of the center was lesser. So this had a huge impact. The coalition government, it had a huge impact on the reduced frequency, because now any government that was being formed at the center was a coalition, and the regional parties had a huge stake in it, right? So that was one of the factors. The second important point that you can note is rise of regional parties, right? So there was a rise of regional parties even in the northern India, and dominated regional parties dominated in the southern India. And the regional parties were very important to the coalition governments, right? So because of this changed scenario, where the India was not witnessing an absolute brute majority at the central level, the use of Article 356 by the union governments was sparingly reduced, right? Then you can highlight the role of Rajya Sabha, right? So with the rise of regional parties, Rajya Sabha also emerged as the true representative of the issues of the states, right? So the leaders who came to the Rajya Sabha were more vocal about issues faced by different states, and there was more discussion and consensus on regional issues, and all of these together led to reduced use of Article 356, right? The next point that you can highlight is past misuse, right? So as already stated, between 1975 to 77, Article 356 was used very arbitrarily, and this was a mistake of the past that brought bad name to the government of that time. And now the governments were very much wary of the fact that public opinion was very much against the misuse of Article 536, and to avoid any backlash, they started using it as a last resort, right? Then you can highlight the role of governors and the presidents in this regard, the integrity of some of the governors and presidents, right? So we are talking about integrity of both president and governors. So there is many examples that the presidents and governors have a huge role to play, had a huge role to play in scrutinizing the decision making of whether to impose the president rule in the state or not, right? You can take an example of one of the prominent example is K.R. Narayana. K.R. Narayanan, in 1997, he was asked by the center to impose president rule in the state of Uttar Pradesh, which he denied. Also, if you look at prominent governors who did this, one of the example that you can take is Surjit Singh Barnala, who was a then governor of the state of Tamil Nadu. So he was asked to send a report on the constitutional crisis and the in the state, to which he denied. Under 356 clause 1, he has to send a report, to which he denied, because he felt that it would be unfair, right? There is not a major issue which warrants imposition of president rule in the state. Also, role of constitutional bodies, right? So the prominent one would be Interstate Council under 263. So Interstate Council was a very important platform where both regional parties, state parties, and the union could come together on important issues. So if you look at the 8th meeting of Interstate Council, which is also known as the Srinagar Conclave, it was chaired by Deputy Prime Minister L.K. Advani in 2003. So after the S.R. Bomai judgment, the regional parties, the state parties, they pressed that the center should use 356 very much sparingly, and this was decided in that meeting. So interstate council also had a huge role to play as far as consensus on issues of center state relations are concerned. So that is an important political development that you can note in your answer. So this completes the body of your answer. We have discussed legal factors, we have discussed the political factors. Now how to conclude? The conclusion for this particular answer should just be a summary of what you have already written in your answer, what observations you have made in your answer already. So article 356 is an extreme power with the union, and as federalism has been declared to be part of basic structure now, so it should be used very much sparingly and only in extreme conditions as a measure of last resort, right? When all possible alternatives to resolve the constitutional impasse in the state fail, right, the governor also should look for opportunities if if the government loses trust, right, and the confidence of the people. The governor should also explore possibilities of having a government that can enjoy the majority and trust of the assembly before recommending the application of president's rule in the state, as is happening at present, right? So this is something that you can write in the conclusion. So we will meet next time with another video. Till then, please do comment, please do engage with us. If you have any doubts, please put it in the comment section. We'll love to respond to your doubts, right? So your engagement, you should also try to share it with your peers, right? And do like and subscribe the video. Thank you.